The throne hall of the Galactic Empire glittered with more jewels than a dying star could shed in a lifetime. Chandeliers spun with refracted light from crystals mined on worlds where the miners never saw the sun. Rows of courtiers in elaborate carapaces and silken scales fanned themselves with mechanical wings, their laughter a careful chorus meant to echo their king's mood. On the dais, the emperor lounged, his crown taller than his shoulders, his robes woven from fibers so rare that entire systems had been stripped bare to craft them. He tapped one claw against the armrest as if drumming on the bones of a world, and his voice, slow, venomous, amused, rolled out across the chamber. "One human," he said, almost purring. "One. Not a fleet. Not a battalion. Not even a pack of the hairy brutes. Just one, wandering, nameless, insignificant, human. And he inconveniences us." The courtiers rippled with chuckles. Some fluttered feathered frills. Others clicked mandibles in amusement. The laughter was safe, rehearsed. The emperor's eyes glittered with a kind of cruelty that had no ceiling. A noble from the insectoid houses raised a trembling appendage. "Sire, forgive the boldness, but perhaps this is no ordinary primate? Perhaps he is augmented? A weapon in disguise." The emperor's laugh rang, booming off jeweled walls. A weapon? A farmer's son from a mud world that once considered soap a luxury? No, my lords, what he is a joke. A blemish upon our pride. Our empire, spanning 10,000 stars, cannot have its name whispered in taverns because one earthborn wanderer embarrassed a patrol. He leaned forward, voice narrowing to a needlepoint. "We will erase him. Not quietly, not delicately. We will crush him so thoroughly that every child who hears the story will laugh before they tremble." He lifted a hand, and armored guards stepped forward, their shadows long and sharp across the polished floor. "Send the assassins," he commanded. 50 of them. The best blades, the sharpest poisons, the cleverest shadows. I want him taken alive, broken in body, but not spirit. I want to look into the eyes of this ape and see him know what it is to stand before civilization incarnate. He smiled thin and cruel. "Then, perhaps, I will have him stuffed and placed here as a conversation piece." The nobles clattered with glee. Bets were made instantly, whispered behind silk fans and sharpened quills. Some wagered minutes, others hours. None dared to guess longer. The chamber rang with the safe joy of cruelty, the laughter of those who had never bled. Across the galaxy, far from the jeweled suffocation of that hall, a man sat at a dented metal table in a dusty outpost canteen. The ceiling fan above him spun slowly, lazily, as if even machinery in this forgotten place lacked ambition. A mug of lukewarm coffee rested in his hands, steam curling in tired threads. He wore no armor, no crown, no uniform. Just a battered jacket, scuffed boots, and the air of a man who'd carried too many burdens too long without complaint. His face was unremarkable, lined, weathered, carrying a smile too polite to be sincere. He hummed softly, off-key, a tune older than the stars these aliens worshipped, something from Earth that smelled of jukeboxes and truck stops. A server, a leathery-skinned local, glanced his way. "You always hum when trouble's coming." The man sipped, eyes twinkling faintly. Sometimes it helps to set the soundtrack before the scene starts. He spoke without raising his voice, but every word landed with the weight of a hammer on stone. Around him, the canteen bustled with miners, traders, drifters, all trying to pretend they didn't keep glancing at the door. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and cheap stew. Yet in the middle of it, he looked perfectly at ease, like a wolf dozing in tall grass, while hunters crept near. They arrived without fanfare. Shadows first, then boots, then weapons that shimmered with toxins and energy designed to unmake flesh. Assassins from across the galaxy, scaled, feathered, armored, silent, slipped into the outpost like knives sliding between ribs. Their presence shifted the air, and conversations faltered into silence. The bartender ducked behind his counter. A child peered from a doorway, then was yanked back by frightened hands. The man did not rise. He stirred his coffee with a bent spoon, humming a little louder. 50, he murmured to himself, almost wistful. Either they think too highly of me or too little of themselves. The first assassin lunged, a creature of blades and acid, its face hidden behind a helmet of black glass. The man moved only slightly, tilting the table with a single shove. The assassin tripped, slammed into the wall, and a bottle shattered over its head. It fell, twitching, more from surprise and pain. The second came faster, firing a dart meant to paralyze. The man shifted, and the dart embedded itself in the ceiling fan, which groaned and dropped onto another assassin's skull. Sparks lit the room. Screams followed. Panic spread, not among the locals. They already knew what silence meant, but among the killers. The man stood now, slow as sunrise, stretching his shoulders with the casualness of someone shaking off a nap. "Gentlemen," he said pleasantly, his accent rolling like old whiskey, "I do appreciate the effort. Truly. But you're crowding the place." He walked as though the room belonged to him, weaving between blows that seemed too fast for thought. A knife meant for his throat ended up in another assassin's side. A blaster bolt ricocheted off a frying pan he flicked up from the counter, striking its wielder in the leg. He never raised his voice, never cursed, never snarled. He was courteous, even when breaking bones. One assassin roared, towering, armored like a walking fortress. The man tipped his hat, politely. "Sir," he said, before kicking the support beam beside him. The old wood gave way, the ceiling collapsed, and the giant vanished beneath rubble. The locals peeked through cracks in their fear, watching as the impossible unfolded. The assassins, legends whispered in every port as unbeatable shadows, fell one by one. Their cries grew ragged, their strikes desperate, and the man, still humming, moved with the inevitability of weather, of tides, of history itself. He did not fight like someone surviving. He fought like someone guiding a dance he'd already choreographed. Minutes later, silence. 50 bodies, some groaning, some still, scattered across the canteen and the dusty street beyond. The man brushed plaster from his shoulders, picked up his mug from the wreckage, and frowned. "Cold coffee." He set it down gently, almost mournfully, then crouched beside one assassin, still breathing. With a kindness that didn't match the moment, he said, "Tell your masters this. The first mistake was underestimating me. The second was sending 50. It tells me they're scared. Fear makes people sloppy." He patted the assassin's shoulder as though consoling a child. "And sloppiness, well, that gets people killed." He rose, straightened his jacket, and walked out into the fading light. The dust swirled at his boots, golden in the sunset. He did not look back. Far away, in the jeweled hall of the empire, the king reclined, expecting laughter, expecting triumph. A messenger drone arrived, hovering low, carrying a sealed container. The nobles leaned forward, eager for spectacle. The emperor waved it open with theatrical flourish. The lid hissed. Gas curled outward. Inside, stacked with grim precision, were 50 severed heads. Each one bore an expression of shock, fear, disbelief. None bore victory. The laughter died, like air fleeing a punctured lung. Silence claimed the chamber. The emperor stared, his grin frozen, as though carved in ice. For a moment, not even his crown seemed heavy enough to anchor him to certainty. A tiny slip of parchment rested atop the grisly cargo. Inked in a hand both neat and unhurried were words that dripped with politeness. "Your Majesty, thank you for the company. But if you truly wish to meet me, kindly send more. 50 is a lonely number." The emperor's jaw tightened. Somewhere in the galaxy, one human sipped lukewarm coffee and hummed an old Earth song, waiting for the next round. The throne hall of the Galactic Empire, once a theater of laughter, now sat like a mausoleum where the air itself refused to move. The jeweled chandeliers still burned, the silken robes still shimmered, but the confidence that had gilded every motion was gone. Silence clung to the nobles, broken only by the faint hiss of the stasis box, where 50 heads lay stacked like grim fruit. The emperor had not moved in what felt like an hour. His claws gripped the throne's armrests so tightly that grooves scored into the priceless alloy. The parchment with its polite taunt lay in his lap, words glowing faintly as if they mocked him in candlelight. At last he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of a collapsing star. One man. The nobles shifted uncomfortably, wings folding tight, carapaces clattering. The insectoid minister, who had dared to raise a warning earlier, kept his eyes down. A scaled noblewoman flicked her tongue nervously. Someone sneezed, the sound echoing like blasphemy. The emperor rose. 50 assassins from 50 worlds. Not one survives. Their heads sent back to me like a gift basket. He raised the parchment, and he writes with ink of all things. Not a datapulse. Not a digital signature. Ink. His voice soured. A barbarian's affectation. A farmer's pride. One of the generals cleared his throat, mandibles clicking. Perhaps, sire, it was not he alone. Perhaps he commands a hidden force. The emperor's hand flicked, and the general's head fell from his shoulders before the sentence finished. No blade, no weapon, just the emperor's displeasure made manifest. Blood hissed as it was vaporized by cleansing drones. Do not insult me with excuses, the emperor hissed. One human. That is all. And we will not whisper of conspiracies like frightened children. We will act. He turned, robes sweeping like storms. Send the council. We will have debate. And then we will have war. The nobles bowed low, though every one of them thought the same unthinkable thought. If 50 assassins could not silence one human, what in the void could? Far from the choking pomp of the palace, the man himself sat cross-legged in a clearing of dust and stone, the desert stretching wide around him. He had dragged a chair out from the ruins of the canteen and set it beneath the meager shade of a broken antenna tower. On the table before him lay a notebook, its leather cracked with years, pages filled with cramped handwriting. He wrote slowly, occasionally pausing to sip from a dented canteen or adjust his boots. The silence of the outpost was not oppressive. It was companionable. A few locals shuffled about, repairing broken stalls, sweeping rubble. Children darted through shadows, daring each other to peek at the man. He would lift a hand and wave politely, and they would scatter with delighted screams. A trader approached nervously, carrying a basket of food. "Sir," she said, voice trembling, you saved us." The man glanced up, pen paused mid-sentence. His smile was small, easy. "No, I just didn't like the company." He pushed the basket back, gently. "Keep it. Feed your kids. I've got enough." "But—" He cut her off with a shake of his head. "If you want to pay me back, brew a pot of coffee that doesn't taste like engine oil." The trader blinked, uncertain if he was joking, then laughed in relief. Humor was oxygen after fear. He returned to his notebook, writing as though the galaxy had not shifted on its axis. His humming resumed, something old, mournful, yet steady. A tune about trains or highways, or some earthbound thing no one here understood. Above the planet, ships lingered. Recon drones flitted in low orbit, their lenses drinking in every detail. They saw the man write, eat, stretch, and sleep. They saw no army, no fortress, no defenses, but dust. Reports streamed back to the Empire. The throne room filled with speculation. He ignores us. This is arrogance. No, it is misdirection. He wants us to underestimate him. Perhaps he is simple. Perhaps we misjudge his kind. Simple, another snapped. 50 assassins don't die to simplicity. The emperor's advisors argued, voices rising. One ancient strategist, his skin a dull gray like the stone of old tombs, spoke carefully. "Majesty, I have studied humans since first contact. Their history is inconsistent. They are comedians and conquerors, poets and predators. They smile when they should scream. They weep when they should kill. But corner them, and—" he hesitated. "And they do not yield. They calculate. They endure. They become something else." The chamber fell quiet, the weight of his words making even silk feel heavy. The emperor sneered. "And you propose what? Fear? Surrender to a creature who bleeds like any other?" The strategist bowed his head. "I propose caution. Humans are the only species I have seen that makes war into art. They do not merely fight, they make every act a message." The emperor turned away. "Art or not, this one dies. I will not have the empire mocked by parchment and ink. Orders went out. More ships, this time not shadows but storms, descended on the outpost world. Their presence was a new sun in the sky, blotting stars with steel. The man did not flinch. He stirred beans in a dented pan, the smell carrying across the dusty clearing. Locals watched in terror as the ships filled the heavens. He spoke over his shoulder, casual as wind. Don't stare at them too long. Makes them feel important. When a drone descended, voice booming with threats in a dozen languages, he shielded his eyes against the glare. Friend, he called up, could you keep it down? Food's delicate work. The drone spat a demand. Surrender or be annihilated. He leaned back in his chair. Annihilated, HM? Before or after supper? He grinned faintly, teeth flashing. Timing's everything. The drone hesitated, as if language itself had tripped. Its sensors noted no fear. Only a man who smiled at extinction like it was a passing storm. The people of the outpost huddled, terrified. Yet slowly, their fear thinned. The man's calm infected them. His jokes, his humming, his complaints about coffee, all absurd in the shadow of death, became a shield thicker than walls. They whispered to each other, "He isn't afraid, so why should we be?" Reports streamed back again. "He mocks us openly. He invites annihilation. Perhaps he is mad." Or perhaps, the gray strategist murmured, "he knows something we do not." The Emperor's patience cracked. "Prepare the armada," he thundered. "If he will not kneel, then he will drown." Back on the dust world, the man closed his notebook, slipped into his jacket, and finally sighed. He rose, dusted his hands, and looked up at the sky thick with ships. His voice, low and polite, carried farther than it should have. 50 was sloppy, he murmured. But an armada? That's just greedy. The locals stared, uncomprehending. The man stretched, joints popping, and began walking out toward the horizon, where the dunes rose like sleeping beasts. He moved without hurry, without fear, as though the coming storm was no more threatening than a change in the wind. Above, the first wave of the armada shifted formation. Commanders barked orders. Engines roared. But for the first time, the sound carried not confidence, but doubt. The strategist in the throne hall, watching the live feed, whispered words no one else dared say aloud. "Majesty, what if this is exactly what he wants?" The Emperor heard, but his pride was louder. He slammed a clawed hand against the throne's arm. Then let him have it. Let him choke on the full weight of the empire. The feed focused closer on the man walking the desert, his silhouette small but steady. He paused once, turning slightly toward the sky, as though he knew the galaxy watched. His expression was unreadable, polite, calm. But in his eyes burned something colder, sharper. Not defiance, not arrogance. Calculation. He lifted a hand, not in surrender, but in greeting. The armada shuddered, 1,000,000 tons of steel suddenly feeling weightless, fragile, as though the gesture had unmoored them. And in that moment, the galaxy realized the human was not waiting to survive. He was waiting to begin. The sky above the dust world thickened with steel until it looked less like heavens and more like the lid of a coffin. The armada descended, blotting out the stars, each ship bristling with weapons designed to unmake civilizations. Engines hummed like the growl of 1,000 predators. Across the planet, people trembled in doorways, clutching their children, whispering prayers to gods too small for the storm gathering overhead. And the man walked on, steady as if he had no audience at all. His boots sank slightly into the sand, leaving neat impressions that the wind tried and failed to erase. He hummed again, some stubborn earth melody, low and almost cheerful. The absurdity of it gnawed at the commanders watching through their feeds. One leaned close to another and muttered, "Why does he hum?" No one answered, because no one knew. The Emperor's voice cracked across comms like a whip. "Begin containment. Encircle him. Let every watching world see the futility of his defiance." The armada moved. Columns of dropships peeled away from the motherships, descending in synchronized arcs. Troop carriers poured soldiers onto the desert in disciplined lines, their armor gleaming, banners snapping in the artificial wind of their descent. Drones circled overhead, capturing every angle for the Empire's broadcast. Soon, every screen across 10,000 systems would show the spectacle. One human swallowed by the Empire's might. The man paused at the crest of a dune, watching the tide of enemies crash against the desert floor. He dug a hand into his pocket, pulled out a bent coin, and flicked it into the air. The sunlight caught on it as it spun, and he caught it again, smiling faintly. "Call it, boys," he murmured. "Heads or tails?" The ground beneath the first wave of soldiers collapsed. Sand shifted in deliberate channels carved long ago, and whole platoons fell screaming into pits lined with jagged scrap metal scavenged from wrecks. The watching commanders barked in shock. The human sighed, almost disappointed. "Should have watched where you were stepping." Explosions tore through the left flank as old fuel drums, half buried and rigged with the simplest of triggers, ignited in a chain. Fire rolled across the desert, painting soldiers in orange and black. Panic rippled through their lines, but training shoved them back into formation. They advanced again, weapons raised. From a distance, it looked like they were advancing on a man. In truth, they were advancing into his memory. Every rock, every dune, every rusting husk of machinery scattered across the wasteland had been mapped, wired, and prepared. The humans' traps sprang like old friends answering a call. Nets of wires snapped tight, dragging soldiers into clusters before explosives ripped them apart. Holographic projectors, scavenged from wrecked freighters, flickered false images, decoys of the man running left, right, even vanishing altogether. Troops wasted fire on ghosts, while the real man simply walked forward, unhurried. The Emperor, watching from his throne via the great display, snarled, "How? This is not chance. This is strategy." The old gray strategist lowered his eyes. "Majesty, he has been preparing." Preparing for what? The strategist's voice was grave. "For us." On the desert floor, officers screamed orders. "Flank him. Surround him. Pin him down." The human crouched, brushed sand from a half-buried console, and flicked a switch. The ground shuddered. From beneath the dunes rose the remains of an ancient mining rig, its drills sharpened into spinning blades. It lumbered forward, belching smoke, tearing through the enemy's right flank. Soldiers scattered like insects under a torch. The man dusted his hands and muttered, "Recycling at its finest." Still, the Empire pressed forward. Pride outweighed fear. The Armada's commanders would not be shamed again. Heavy artillery rolled into position, towering cannons anchoring into the sand. Energy beams lanced out, obliterating dunes, searing shadows into glass. The man ducked behind a ridge, sipping from his canteen as the blasts shook the world around him. He winced. They always go for the big guns first. Compensation issue, maybe. When the smoke cleared, soldiers swarmed forward, certain they had reduced him to ash. But from the blackened ground rose not silence, but music. Speakers hidden in the dunes crackled to life, broadcasting a jaunty earth tune, something impossibly out of place, harmonica and guitar. Soldiers faltered, their nerves fraying. The human's voice joined through the comms, calm and amused. "You hear that? That's called country music. It's older than your empires. We used to play it in bars when we were broke, lonely, and planning something stupid. Fitting, don't you think?" The Emperor's knuckles whitened on the throne. Cut his transmission. But they couldn't. The man's signal piggybacked on their own comms, flowing through their networks like water through a cracked hull. Troops charged the ridge. The man rose from behind it, tossing aside his empty canteen. He didn't raise a rifle. He didn't need to. The ridge itself exploded outward, boulders rolling down like an avalanche, crushing entire squads. He strolled along the collapsing edge, jacket flapping, humming along with the music. A commander screamed, "He cannot fight forever. Numbers will wear him down." The gray strategist whispered, unheard except by himself, "But he isn't fighting. He's teaching." Back in the outpost, the locals huddled around battered screens, watching the impossible unfold. A child asked, "Mama, is he winning?" The mother swallowed, eyes wide. "He's not losing." The desert was a canvas now, painted in fire and dust. The man guided the battle with the ease of a gambler sliding cards across a table. Every move was calculated, every reaction anticipated. He wasn't reacting to the armada. They were reacting to him. At one point, a squad managed to corner him near a wrecked freighter. They advanced cautiously, weapons drawn. He held up his hands politely. "Careful. Step wrong here and you'll regret it." They sneered and moved closer. The freighter's reactor, long ago gutted and wired, erupted in a concussive blast that lit the horizon. Their screams cut off instantly. The man dusted off his sleeves. "Told you." Above, dread began to seep through the command channels. Reports of casualties multiplied. The numbers didn't add up. This wasn't one man with luck. This was design. The Emperor demanded explanations, but none satisfied. He is one man. He cannot prepare for an armada. The gray strategist finally dared to lift his head. "Majesty, what if the armada was what he prepared for?" The words hung like a noose. On the battlefield, the man paused to light a cigarette, its ember glowing in the twilight. He took one drag, exhaled smoke, and looked up at the ships blotting the sky. His voice carried through the comms, soft, conversational. "You brought me a lot of toys. Be a shame if they all broke at once." The commanders froze. They didn't understand, until the ground beneath their artillery began to rumble. Mines, planted months ago, detonated in sequence. Cannons toppled like children's blocks. Fuel depots went up in towers of flame. The man flicked ash from his cigarette. "See, the thing about deserts? They hide secrets real well." Panic rippled through the troops. Some broke formation. Some fired wildly at shadows. The Empire's perfect discipline, drilled into them over centuries, fractured like glass under a hammer. The Emperor watched in horror as his armada, his pride, stumbled into chaos. His voice shook the chamber. "Enough. Overwhelm him. Burn the world if you must." On the planet, the sky ignited with bombardment. Entire swaths of desert melted into glass. But when the smoke cleared, the human's voice still came, faint but steady, over the comms. "You know, you're making this awfully hard on yourselves. I warned you 50 was sloppy. Armadas are worse. See, when you bring too many pieces to the board." He paused, letting the silence sharpen. "A good player flips the board." The feed cut. Every ship in the armada blinked with sudden alarms. Systems crashed. Engines sputtered. Drones fell from the sky like shot birds. Their own network, piggybacked, infected, rewritten, turned against them. Lights flickered. Weapons locked without command. Ships collided in confusion. The man stood alone on the glass desert, cigarette still glowing, as the sky filled with falling stars, wreckage burning through the atmosphere. He exhaled smoke and shook his head. And they say poker night doesn't teach strategy. In the throne hall, silence reigned. The nobles dared not breathe. The Emperor stared at the collapsing feed, veins pulsing at his temples. His empire's might, undone by one man's traps, one man's patience. The gray strategist's voice was thin but sure. "Majesty, he is not fighting to win battles. He is fighting to tell a story." The Emperor's claws clenched. "Then we will end his story. I will go myself if I must." Across the galaxy, the human scribbled a few notes in his battered book, closed it, and looked into the smoking sky. His smile was polite, but his eyes were cold. He whispered to himself, as though the Emperor could hear, "Your move, Majesty." The Emperor did what no one in living memory had seen him do. He rose from his throne without ceremony, without entourage, and without mask. The jeweled hall gasped as his crown was left behind on the throne, glimmering like a discarded relic. His eyes burned with fury, his body radiating the kind of wrath that had toppled dynasties. In his silence, whole nobles trembled. Then came the words, low but absolute. "Ready the flagship. If the galaxy wishes to laugh, let it laugh at my hand, not my servants." The announcement spread across the empire like lightning through dry plains. To speak it aloud was heresy, but still it was whispered. "The Emperor goes himself." Some took comfort, others shivered. The old strategist merely bowed his head in mourning, though no one dared ask for whom. The flagship descended into orbit above the dust world, its hull so vast that it eclipsed entire horizons. The locals gathered in silence, watching the shadow devour the sun. The air carried a hum that rattled bones and filled lungs with dread. Yet the man stood alone at the edge of the dunes, his jacket flapping in the heavy wind, one hand resting lightly in his pocket, the other holding the battered notebook. He flipped it open, scribbled something without looking up, then closed it again. The first wave of guards emerged, not assassins this time, but the Emperor's personal retinue. Giants armored in obsidian plating, each step sinking deep into the sand. They moved with a discipline that spoke not of fear, not of loyalty, but of indoctrination. Their weapons gleamed in the pale desert sun. The man greeted them with a faint nod. "Afternoon, boys. Hope you stretched. Would be ashamed to cramp up before the boss arrives." They didn't speak. They advanced, blades drawn. He sighed, rolling his shoulders like someone preparing for a long day's work. The sand kicked up around him as they lunged. He ducked beneath a blade, seized its wielder's wrist, and twisted until metal screamed. Another swung, and he sidestepped, guiding the strike into a comrade's armor. It was less battle than inevitability, each move precise, unhurried, as though he already knew the outcome. The guards fell one by one, not slain quickly, but dismantled, broken apart with quiet efficiency. When the last collapsed, gasping in the sand, the man crouched beside him. "You're loyal," he said softly, almost kindly. "But loyalty's only as good as the man you serve." He stood again, brushing dust from his knees. The flagship's central ramp lowered. From the blinding light within stepped the Emperor himself, robes stripped down to armor, no crown on his head, only fury in his eyes. He was taller than most had imagined, broad, powerful, the embodiment of a predator who had never known defeat. Each step shook the ramp. His voice rolled across the desert, deep and terrible. "You mock my empire. You kill my assassins. You break my armada. Now you stand before me as though you are owed the courtesy of survival." The man tipped his head, politely. "I stand before you because you came. Courtesy's yours to give, not mine to take." The Emperor sneered, stepping onto the sand. "You are nothing. A mammal born in mud. I could crush you between two fingers." The man's eyes twinkled, though his smile was faint. "And yet here we are, 2 fingers short." The Emperor roared, a sound like tectonic plates grinding. He lunged forward, faster than his size promised, claws raking the air. The man shifted just enough, the attack missing by inches. Sand erupted in a spray. The human backpedaled, dust swirling, jacket tearing from the force. The battle began. The Emperor struck with the fury of a collapsing star, each blow capable of shattering stone. The man answered not with equal force, but with redirection. He slid, pivoted, ducked, each movement conserving energy, each motion turning the Emperor's power back against him. The sand became a storm around them, soldiers watching from the flagship unable to see who pressed advantage. At one point the Emperor's claw grazed his side, blood staining the jacket. The man hissed, but only softly, as if the wound were an inconvenience, nothing more. He tightened his grip on the notebook he still held in one hand, never letting it drop. The Emperor sneered. "You bleed. You are mortal after all." The man straightened, panting lightly, eyes hardening. "Oh, I've always been mortal. That's the difference, Your Majesty. Mortals plan. Mortals prepare. Mortals endure." With a sudden burst, he closed distance, striking not at the Emperor's chest or arms, but at the joints of his armor, precise blows that cracked mechanisms and loosened plates. The Emperor staggered, more shocked than injured. "You fight like prey," the Emperor spat. "No," the man said, circling him slowly, voice calm. "I fight like someone who knows the value of patience. Wolves don't rush the herd. They watch, they wait, they choose the weak spot." The Emperor lunged again, but slower now, armor dragging. The man sidestepped, twisted, and the giant stumbled, crashing into the sand. Gasps echoed from the soldiers above. The Emperor roared, shoving himself up. "You cannot defeat me. I am the Empire. The man's expression softened, almost pitying. No. You're a crown on legs. The empire is everyone too scared to tell you no. The emperor struck again, and again the man countered, redirecting fury into futility. The desert floor was cratered, blackened, scarred by their clash. Yet through it all, the human remained steady, like a stone in a flood. Finally, the emperor faltered, armor cracked, breath ragged. The man approached slowly, every step deliberate. He stopped just out of reach, eyes meeting the emperor's. You want to know the truth? The emperor snarled, but his silence was answer enough. The man lifted the battered notebook and tapped it. You thought I was surviving, hiding, running. What I was really doing was writing. He flipped it open, pages fluttering in the wind. Every ambush, every trap, every move you made, it was all part of the story I wanted told. And while you chased one man across a dust ball, my people moved. The emperor blinked, confusion cutting through rage. Your people. Humans, the man said simply, his smile thin. You thought I was alone. But the trick with humans is, we never are. Even when you can't see us, we're in the walls, the wires, the shadows. While you sent assassins, we slipped into your fleets. While you sent armadas, we emptied your supply lines. While you chased me here, our ships crossed borders you left unguarded. You didn't fight one man. You fought the distraction he gave you. The emperor's breath came heavy, fury cracking into dread. Reports suddenly poured into his comms. Colonies burning, outposts lost, fleets gone silent, nobles defecting. The empire unraveling not from the outside, but from within. The man closed the notebook with a snap. You want a lesson? Here it is. Never send 50 to catch one, Majesty. Because that one might not be bait for your pride. He might be the fuse for your downfall. The emperor lunged, desperation replacing skill. The man moved in one fluid motion, sidestepping, pivoting, and slamming the notebook's spine into the side of the emperor's skull. The giant crumpled to the sand, dazed, armor cracking beneath his own weight. The human crouched beside him, voice low, calm, polite. This isn't personal. Empires fall. That's history. The only choice you had was whether you'd fall quietly. You chose spectacle. And now, he gestured to the horizon, where streaks of fire filled the sky, ships burning in atmosphere, debris raining down. Now everyone will remember how you lost. The emperor's eyes rolled, fury dimming into helpless rage. You are monsters. The man's smile was weary, almost sorrowful. No, we're human. Monsters just follow instinct. We plan. He rose, leaving the emperor crumpled in the sand, and looked to the soldiers watching from the flagship. His voice carried clear and sharp. You don't owe him your lives. Go home. Tell your families the truth. The empire's over. No one moved at first. Then one soldier lowered his weapon. Another followed. The silence of obedience cracked, and murmurs rose. The seeds of defection spread like fire in dry grass. The man turned away, walking back toward the outpost as smoke and ruin painted the sky. His humming returned, faint but steady, the same stubborn earth tune he'd carried through every fight. He reached the canteen, or what was left of it, and sat at the same table where he had once sipped lukewarm coffee. He poured water into the cracked mug, raised it in a mock toast to the horizon, and drank. The locals gathered around, cautious, reverent. One child whispered, "Is it over?" The man looked down at his empty mug, then at the sky burning with the remnants of an empire. He smiled faintly. For him? Yeah. For us? Just beginning. He opened the notebook one last time, scribbled a line, and closed it with finality. The book was heavy now, not with paper, but with a story that would echo through galaxies. Far above, the Emperor's flagship listed in orbit, half its crew abandoning posts, transmissions crackling with confusion. The Emperor himself lay broken in the sand, his own pride heavier than his wounds. The galaxy shifted on its axis, the balance of fear tipping toward a species once dismissed as an afterthought. The man leaned back in his chair, humming, watching the fire fall. He spoke softly, almost to himself, yet it carried across the clearing, a benediction, and a warning both. You thought you sent assassins to catch one man,